I still remember my name sometimes. When the pain cycles through its lowest ebb, when the neural connectors stop screaming directly into my brain stem for just a moment, I can almost hear it whispered in the darkness. Sister Magdalena. That was me once. That was who I was before I became this. They say the Penitent Engine is salvation. They say it's mercy. The ecclesiarchy teaches that through suffering, we find redemption. Through agony, we cleanse our souls. I believed that once. I believed everything they told me in the convent. I was faithful. I was pure. I served the God Emperor with every breath, every prayer, every moment of my existence. But faith wasn't enough to save me from what I became. My sin was doubt. Just one moment of hesitation. One question whispered in the silence of my cell after witnessing what our order did to the refugees on Vandus Prime. We burned them. All of them. Men, women, children who had fled from the Orc invasion, desperately seeking sanctuary behind our walls. But the canoness declared them tainted. She said their suffering had made them weak, that weakness invited corruption, and corruption could not be tolerated. I watched them burn. I heard their screams. And in the quietest corner of my mind, I asked myself if the Emperor truly demanded this. If mercy had no place in his Imperium. That single thought condemned me. The Sisters of Battle do not tolerate weakness. Doubt is heresy. Heresy is damnation. But for those who have served faithfully, for those whose transgression springs from frailty rather than malice, there exists a path. Not to forgiveness, but to usefulness. To transformation into something that can still serve, even if the price is everything you were. They took me to the Mechanicus shrine beneath our fortress monastery. I remember the smell of burning incense mixed with machine oil. I remember the twisted hymns echoing through the cathedral of iron and bone. The tech priests moved like shadows, their augmetic limbs clicking and whirring in rhythms that sounded almost like prayers. The Penitent Engine stood before me, towering and terrible. It looked like a walking sarcophagus, a metal nightmare given form. Massive pistons for legs, arms that ended in flammers and close combat weapons. And at its heart, suspended in a cage of brass and iron, was the pilot's throne. My throne. My prison. My penance. They stripped away my armor first. Then my robes. Then my dignity. I was laid bare before the machine, before the Emperor's judgment made manifest in steel and suffering. The tech priests chanted in binaric cant as they began the ritual of installation. Sister Superior Augustina stood witness, her face carved from stone, showing nothing of what she felt watching one of her own transformed into a weapon of penance. The neural interface was the worst part. Not the surgical cutting. Not the removal of my limbs. Not even the moment they peeled back my skin to expose the neural pathways that would connect me to the machine. No, the worst part was when they activated it. Imagine every nerve in your body on fire simultaneously. Imagine your mind forced open and something else pouring in, something mechanical and hungry and utterly without mercy. The machine didn't just connect to me. It invaded me. It became me. My thoughts were no longer entirely my own. The engine's machine spirit howled through my consciousness, demanding obedience, demanding blood, demanding service. But they weren't finished. Penitent engines are not simply piloted. They are suffered. The neural interface is deliberately calibrated to maximize pain while maintaining combat effectiveness. Every movement sends shockwaves of agony through what remains of my nervous system. Every step feels like walking on shattered glass that's also burning. Every breath, though I no longer truly breathe, is an exercise in endurance. They want us to suffer. They need us to suffer. Because our pain is our prayer. Our agony is our atonement. With every scream that tears from the Vox speakers mounted on this machine, with every tear that streams from eyes I can no longer close, I am supposedly washing away my sin. The first battle came within a week. Heretic cultists had risen on a nearby agri-world, worshipping the ruinous powers and spreading corruption. Our order was dispatched to cleanse them. And I went with them, no longer as Sister Magdalena, but as Penitent Engine Designate Sigma 7. They loaded me into the transport with the other engines. There were 3 of us. I couldn't see the others' faces, locked as they were in their own iron tombs, but I could hear them. The crying, the praying, the begging for release that would never come. One of them had been installed for 17 years. 17 years of constant, unending agony. The thought of enduring that for even 17 more minutes seemed impossible. But that's the point, isn't it? The impossible made mandatory. Suffering elevated to sacrament. When we deployed onto the surface of that Agony world, I understood for the first time what I had become. Not a soldier. Not even a weapon. I was a walking monument to the Emperor's wrath, a screaming testament to what happens when faith falters. The hydraulics engaged, and I felt the engine lurch forward. Each step sent lightning through my spine, but the machine didn't care. It couldn't care. It was designed to move regardless of my pain, to fight regardless of my screams. The neural interface forced my consciousness to spread throughout the entire frame. I could feel the flommers, as if they were extensions of my own arms. The heavy bolter mounted on my shoulder might as well have been grafted to my flesh. The cultists saw us coming across the burning fields. I watched through optics that fed directly into my brain, bypassing my actual eyes, which could no longer close, could no longer look away from anything. They started running. Some tried to fight. It didn't matter. The Sister Superior gave the order, and the pain circuits surged. It wasn't just agony anymore. It was compulsion. The engine's machine spirit roared through my mind, demanding blood, demanding purging, demanding that I prove my faith through violence. My flommers ignited without my conscious command. The neural interface had been programmed to respond to the most basic impulses, the most primal urges toward destruction. I burned them. God Emperor, forgive me. I burned them all. The cultists screamed as the promethium washed over them, their bodies igniting like torches. I could hear every individual voice, every plea for mercy, every prayer to their dark gods that went unanswered. And through it all, through every second of that massacre, I felt everything. The heat of the flames reflected back at me. The recoil of the bolter. The crunch of bone and metal as I crushed a fleeing heretic beneath the engine's massive feet. But worse than the killing was what happened inside my own mind. Because part of me, some dark corner that I didn't know existed before they put me in this machine, part of me felt satisfaction. The machine spirit's bloodlust bled into my own consciousness, and I couldn't tell anymore where the engine ended and I began. Was that rage mine? Was that terrible joy at destruction something I felt, or something it made me feel? The battle lasted 4 hours. For me, it lasted an eternity. When it finally ended, when the last cultist had been purged and the fields were nothing but ashen corpses, they didn't release me from the engine. There is no release. We were simply powered down to minimal function and loaded back into the transport. The pain decreased from unbearable to merely excruciating. In the darkness of the cargo hold, I could hear the other penitents weeping. The oldest one, the one who had served 17 years, she tried to speak through her Vox grill. Her voice was barely human anymore, distorted by years of screaming and the machine's interference. But I understood her words. "You'll learn to separate yourself from it," she whispered. "Not completely. Never completely. But enough to survive. Enough to remember that you're still in there somewhere, even when the machine is using your body to kill." I wanted to ask her how. I wanted to know her name, her sin, her story. But before I could form the words, the tech priests administered the sedation protocols. Not sleep. We don't sleep anymore. Just a dimming of consciousness, a retreat into the deepest parts of our minds where the pain is slightly less immediate. In that half-aware state, I dreamed of the convent. I dreamed of morning prayers in the chapel, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows depicting the Emperor's glory. I dreamed of my sisters, of shared meals and quiet conversations about faith and duty. I dreamed of being human. But dreams don't last. Pain is the only constant now. The months that followed became a blur of battles. Orc invasions, chaos uprisings, Genestealer cult purges. Each deployment the same brutal pattern. The pain circuits surge. The machine spirit takes control. I kill. I burn. I destroy. And with each battle, I feel a little more of Sister Magdalena slipping away, replaced by something that's part machine, part broken soul, part weapon. They tell us we're earning redemption. That every heretic we kill, every battle we survive, brings us closer to the Emperor's forgiveness. But I know the truth now. There is no redemption for us. There is only service. Service until the engine breaks down. Service until our bodies finally give out. Service until the agony becomes so total that even the machine can't keep us functional anymore. I've seen it happen. I watched as one of the other penitents, a sister who had served for 23 years, finally reached her limit during a battle against the Tau. Her engine seized up mid-combat. Through the Vox network, I heard her screaming, not in pain but in relief. She was begging them to let her die. Begging the Emperor to finally grant her peace. The tech priests deactivated her pain circuits temporarily. Not as mercy, as maintenance. They extracted what was left of her from the engine, a withered husk that barely resembled anything human. She was still alive, technically. Still breathing. But there was nothing behind her eyes anymore. The woman she had been was gone, hollowed out by decades of torture. They didn't give her the Emperor's peace. They didn't grant her death. Instead, they repurposed her. I later learned she was converted into a servitor, her brain wiped and reprogrammed to serve in some menial capacity aboard a Navy vessel. Even in death, we are not free. Even when the Penitent Engine has consumed everything we were, the Imperium finds ways to extract further service. That's when I truly understood. This isn't about redemption. It's about breaking us so completely that we can never doubt again. It's about transforming our bodies into weapons and our suffering into prayer. The ecclesiarchy doesn't want us to be forgiven. They want us to be examples. There's a moment that comes to every penitent, usually somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd year of service. It's the moment when you stop fighting the machine. When the constant resistance, the desperate clinging to who you were, finally becomes too exhausting to maintain. They call it integration in the technical manuals. The older penitents have a different name for it. They call it the breaking. Mine came during the siege of Hive Tertius. We had been deployed against a Chornate uprising that had consumed 3 entire Hive levels. The fighting was brutal, close-quarters warfare in corridors too narrow for proper maneuvering. My engine scraped against walls, tearing through metal and rockcrete, crushing everything in its path. The cultists came at us in waves, frothing at the mouth, screaming praises to the blood god. I had been active for 16 straight hours. 16 hours of constant pain, constant killing, constant horror. The neural interface was overheating, sending additional jolts of agony through my system with every movement. I could smell my own flesh burning where the connectors met what remained of my body. And then I saw her. A girl, maybe 12 years old, huddled in a corner behind a pile of corpses. She wasn't a cultist. She didn't have the marks. She was just a survivor, a child who had hidden while her entire world tore itself apart around her. Her eyes met mine through the engine's optics, and I saw raw terror in them. The machine spirit screamed for her blood. The pain circuits surged, demanding that I burn everything, purge everything, leave nothing alive that could potentially harbor corruption. But I resisted. For the first time in months, I fought back against the compulsion. I forced the engine to step past her. I refused to kill her. The penalty was immediate and absolute. The pain circuits didn't just surge, they exploded. Every nerve ending that still existed in my ruined body ignited simultaneously. I screamed so loud that my Vox speakers shattered. I could feel the neural interface punishing me, teaching me that disobedience was not an option, that mercy was not permitted, that I existed only to serve and to suffer. But I held. For those few seconds, Sister Magdalena was still there. Still fighting. Still trying to be something more than a weapon. Then the Sister Superior noticed. She saw the engine hesitate. She saw me spare the child. And she made a decision that I should have expected, but somehow still managed to break something fundamental inside me. She executed the girl herself. One bolt round through the head. Clean. Efficient. Merciless. Penitent Sigma 7, she said through the command Vox, her voice cold and measured. Your hesitation has been noted. You are failing in your penance. The pain circuits will be increased by 15% to reinforce your dedication. That night, when they powered me down to minimal function, I didn't try to separate myself from the machine anymore. I didn't retreat into memories of who I used to be. I let Sister Magdalena die. I let her go, because holding on to her was too painful, because being human in this metal tomb was suffering beyond what the machine itself could inflict. The breaking had come, and I had broken. After that, everything became easier. Not better, never better, but easier. I stopped resisting the machine spirit's urges. I stopped trying to spare anyone. I stopped looking for humanity in the faces of those I killed. I became what they wanted me to be. A weapon. A tool. A screaming engine of destruction wrapped in flesh and faith. The other penitents noticed the change. The old one, Sister Carmilla, as I finally learned her name, she spoke to me once during transport. Her voice was sad, understanding in the way that only someone who has endured the same transformation can be. You've let go, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I answered, my own voice barely recognizable through the Vox distortion. I'm sorry, she whispered. I hoped you'd last longer. Some do. Some manage to hold on to pieces of themselves for years. But most of us? We break early. It's easier that way. The pain is just as terrible, but the guilt becomes manageable. Was there a child for you too? I asked. The silence that followed was answer enough. We don't talk about it after that. We don't talk about much at all anymore. There's nothing to say that hasn't been screamed 1,000 times already. We exist in our individual hells, occasionally brushing against each other in the darkness, but ultimately alone. Always alone. The ecclesiarchy calls us blessed. They say we're privileged to serve the emperor so directly, to offer our suffering as prayer, to burn away our sins in the fires of holy war. The common faithful look upon our engines with awe and terror, seeing the righteousness of the God Emperor made manifest. But I know what we really are. We're warnings. We're examples of what happens when faith falters, when doubt creeps in, when you dare to question the necessity of cruelty. We're not warriors earning redemption. We're cautionary tales wrapped in metal and agony, wheeled out for display whenever the ecclesiarchy needs to remind people what mercy costs in the Imperium of man. 5 years now. 5 years since they installed me in this engine. 5 years of constant pain, interrupted only by brief periods of slightly less pain. 5 years of killing without question, burning without mercy, destroying everything I'm pointed at. 5 years of slowly forgetting what it felt like to breathe freely, to move without agony, to exist as something other than a weapon. Sister Carmilla was right. The guilt does become manageable. Everything becomes manageable when you accept that this is all you'll ever be. That this is your existence until the engine breaks or your body finally gives out. That hope is just another sin to be purged. Sometimes, in the moments between battles, I try to remember my name. Sister Magdalena. It sounds distant now, like something I heard in a story once rather than something I was. And I wonder if that's the final mercy the Emperor grants us. Not death, not peace, but forgetting. Forgetting who we were before we became monuments to faith through suffering.